Let's master threading the beautiful BERNINA 790 Pro. I'm going to take you through proper threading etiquette, how to fill a bobbin, how to properly put in a bobbin. We'll talk about the thread stand and everything you should know to make sure that you are going to get the best results when you sit down to stitch. Since the BERNINA 790 Pro and the 790 Plus are very similar machines, we have already done over 100 videos on the BERNINA 790 Plus. So there's a playlist with all of the new videos for this machine and the regular 790 Plus because it really is the same interface all the way through. We have also taken some time to highlight some of the new things that you're going to find on this upgraded model. Hi, I'm Sarah from sewingmastery.com, where you're going to find all the free video tutorials on many models of BERNINAs and sergers and embroidery machines. So please check them out. We also have online courses so you can master this machine, going beyond the manual and the free video tutorials that we have done for this machine. The Embroidery Essentials online course, that's our most popular one to master the embroidery side. The BERNINA Stitching Cosmos online course, over 8 hours of instruction of working with your sewing, stitches, and accessory feet. And our newest one, the BERNINA Pinpoint Placement Masterclass. So check out all those links. You'll find those in the description. Also, while you're watching these videos, I only ask you one thing, that you click like every time you watch a video, and make sure you click the subscribe button so you're updated anytime that we post new videos. All right, threading this machine. Let's just talk about just really quick basics of thread. Quality thread is going to make such a difference on this machine, and those are going to consist of good quality embroidery thread. Isacord is my personal go-to favorite. Metler is a great sewing thread. I'm going to use a cotton one, but you had a nice collection of Metrocene, which is a polyester sampler pack here. So this is a really great quality of thread. If you haven't experienced good quality thread, this is what we're talking about. Now, there are other brands out there that I do love, and there are tons out there that I don't love. So you know how much you have spent on this fabulous machine. Don't put crappy thread in it. It is not going to work as well. So just keep that in mind. You also got a pack of the Polysheen from Metler. And just a note, Polysheen is Isacord, but on smaller spools. You'll actually notice the color number is the same on the big spools as the small spools. So that little variety pack, this is great. I actually use this for sewing too because it is polyester, it is strong, and love that. But there are times when I've picked up student threads, they've been complaining about the machine, and they're actually stretchy. So if you find yourself going into your collection of threads that you have and you find that you can pull and stretch them, you will find that those are not the greatest threads. This is actually a thread that does not stretch. I know I'm pulling really hard, but it doesn't stretch. It makes a difference. Okay, so like I said, I do use this a lot for embroidery. I also sew with this. I love it for machine quilting and using the BERNINA stitch regulator. So for today, I'm going to just take a thread that you can see. I'm going to wind a bobbin and then thread the machine completely, show you how I test a machine to make sure it's sewing perfectly before I start any project. You will find that there are spool caps that come with this machine. So for this one, I can see the end cap is a little larger, so I would pick the larger one to sit on the end to help hold this on the horizontal spool pin. Now, smaller ones, like this little tiny one that's almost like a little cone, fit perfectly inside the embroidery thread. So I love that. But there's times where, as I'm switching colors, this ends up on the floor, and it's frustrating for me because I've dropped it, I can't find it, or I need to go pick it up. And that's where a thread stand becomes my new favorite. So that thread stand has a metal base, and you can use that for any time that you're just going from thread to thread, color changes, and also using larger cones, of course, is perfect for that. So if you do want to use a thread stand, I highly recommend it. You'll see that in most of my videos that a thread stand is in play when I'm using embroidery thread. But for today, let's go ahead and thread with the normal on the machine option. So this one goes right on here. Little slide this on. Just make sure that if you are using spool caps, that you slide it on so there's no gap between the cap and the spool. That's going to be the biggest problem I run into with student complaints, is they just kind of slide that on, their thread goes down between, and it gets caught, wraps up, breaks the needle, and yeah. So eliminate that by just go ahead and pushing that on, or again, using the thread stand. To successfully wind a bobbin, you need to do two things. Number one, always use the thread guide on the back directly in front of the spool. So you'll just bring your thread up and towards you. And the second thing is to make sure that the thread slips in underneath this little pre-tensioner all the way. So if the thread just goes around this and you start to wind a bobbin, it's kind of loose and fluffy. That's gonna, well, not work so great in the machine, but it also is and needs a little tension. So we're just slipping it in. We're following the direction of the arrow shown on the top of your machine. So I'm going around clockwise, crossing back over itself, and then coming over to the bobbin winder. The bobbin winder, you will find that there's only one way to put the bobbin on, and that's with the silver side down. Once you've placed that on the bobbin winder, all you need to do is take your thread, also with the direction of the arrow pictured right here on your machine, and wrap it around the bobbin 5 or 6 times. And there's actually a cutter on the end here. So what I like to do is if I'm just coming around multiple times, I can come under the cutter, and as I pull towards myself, I'll flip this little part on that engages the bobbin winder, and it also cuts the thread to a nice long or short amount, and then just go ahead and wind it full. You'll see that it will go up and down. If it's a little uneven, it's no big deal. As long as you're in the pre-tensioner, this is how you get the perfect bobbin winding effects. You could slow this down, you can speed it up. Usually most people keep it kind of at that 2/3 speed, but it doesn't take long, and boy, are those bobbins awesome or what. Once it stops, just lift your bobbin up, come towards you from around the back, and use that thread cutter to cut your thread. And let's do the bobbin next. How to put this in the bobbin case. As you look at your bobbin case, you will find that there are some places that the thread needs to go between and in and kind of click under. And if the thread is not in there, it's just not going to give you a balanced looking stitch. So there's usually nothing here that we actually adjust. If there's any time where we're using a thicker thread in our bobbin and a thinner thread in our needle, we'll adjust the top tension, and that adjustment is done on screen. So once we put the bobbin in, we're really good to go. There is also only one way to put this in, silver side down. So start by just placing your bobbin in the bobbin case. Then come over to the side where you can find the little groove. As it's coming down and kind of to the left, you can just pull it down into that place and behind the kind of silver curly Q. And as I go behind, I'm going to kind of come down and lift up. So it actually comes and sits in this little opening. And that is exactly where our thread needs to be. Now, on the front of the bobbin case, you'll see that the silver line here is actually what is pushed to take the bobbin case out of the machine. And I kind of keep an eye on that because as this needs to be kind of at about 3 o'clock, actually it's like 3:15 when you put it in. When you go to push it in, you'll notice there's kind of this little dimple off here to the right. If you push on the dimple, it's going to pop it back out. So just kind of push anywhere else and you can just kind of hold it in place, but that does just need to be kind of in that horizontal area. So once it clicks in, and then here when you push in and it pops out, you're just going to take your fingers and pull it out. Now, one of the things we'll talk about in our cleaning and oiling video is the importance of keeping all this nice and lint-free and lubricated. And we have a great little trick because you pop this out, you pop everything out, is how to get it to all pop back in. I've got a flip trick for you, so make sure you find that video and watch my little flip option. And it's magnetic, so once it all goes in, it's perfect. Okay, here, all you need to do is take the thread and come down on this cutter. So we've had a cutter at the top, cutter here, cut it and close the door, and as they say, forget about it. that bobbin thread will come up once we start to stitch. So we don't have to do the old-fashioned way of bringing our bobbin thread up before we start to sew. The only thing you have to do before you start to thread is make sure the presser foot is up. And that will probably be the case, but for any reason that foot goes down, you do need to have it in the up position for you to thread the machine. Everything opens up at that time. We are done winding a bobbin, so this is the only time you go around this little pre-tensioner. So just undo it. Again, we're using the guide right behind the machine, and I just take my two hands, lift up, and then I'm going to bring my left hand towards me. And notice what I'm doing with my right hand. I'm holding onto this thread just a little bit longer as I bring the thread down through this first little groove. The arrow right there is guiding us to come down. But in that area are the tension discs. And I need you to thread it with some purpose. Purpose means you're going to kind of pull down, and if you have a little resistance, it perfectly places it where it needs to go. If you're very gentle and you don't want to break it, you're going to have those loops on the back of your fabric when you go to stitch, and that's because you didn't thread deep enough into this first groove right here. So just rethread the machine if you ever get those kind of nesting on the back of your fabric. That's the problem. The thread's not in the top tension. I'm going to come down, and then I'm going to come back up, and at this point I can kind of let go. You can then take your thread and you're coming in on the right side and down on the left of the take-up lever. Now, if you've turned your machine by hand and it is not at the highest position, remember you can touch the needle up, down button. Oh yeah, first stitch of the day here. And just make sure that it comes up to the highest point. This button is going to make sure that that's exactly the easiest place for it to be sitting for you to thread it the easiest. Bernina has now added a nice little guard to this, and it's kind of black. So what you want to do is just make sure that you're taking the thread all the way back and then down, and it will hook into the eye of the take-up lever without any extra work. There are two guides right before you go through the needle. So one right here at the base of the housing, and the second one right at the top of the needle. Notice I was able to do that with just one hand, so you shouldn't have to get two hands in there. Just go ahead and get used to going around it once, and then the second one. And now we're ready to use the amazing needle threader built into the Bernina 790 Pro. Bring the thread across into this little mouth opening, and then over the corner of the machine. This will cut the thread, so that's thread cutter number 3, and then we're going to use the needle threader button, and the machine will do the rest. Now here's a little tip. Even though the thread is kind of up where the needle threader was, you kind of pulled it through, if you just go ahead and start to sew, it will go and get all connected as you need. But most of us like to kind of pull it down and put it underneath our presser foot and be all ready. But if you just went ahead and started sewing, it will work too. If your machine is not in a sewing cabinet, I am a fan of the slide-on table that comes with the Bernina machine. Take your thread, put it underneath the foot. There's a little groove on the side. I would also suggest is as you're sewing or test sewing your machine, always use 2 layers of fabric. So I usually just take a piece of fabric, fold it in half, and then go ahead and start to stitch. On this machine, the machine will automatically lower the presser foot, start to stitch. It'll also bring up your bobbin thread. And we have the thread cutter at the end. If you use it, it puts the needle at the highest position, it puts the take-up lever at the highest position, it lifts the foot and cuts the thread, and we can see that we have the same looking stitch on the front as we do on the back. So this will be the basics of you understanding threading. If something does not go right, all you need to do is go back, rethread the machine, check the bobbin, take it out. If it's been a day or two, but since you last oiled this machine, you will need to do that on a daily basis for it to really be a happy machine. Trust me, anytime that I haven't done that, I usually end up fighting with it a little bit because it needs lubrication. So just keep that in mind. And also the cleaning down in the bobbin area is so crucial. fabrics and battings, minkies, fleeces, and flannels are all linty fabrics, and that becomes an issue, and you got to keep this machine spotless and lubricated. So check out our video on how to clean and oil. We'll put it right up here, and we'll put it at the end of this video so you can make sure you're doing all those steps correctly, and once again, do it on a regular basis. And just a reminder that having your machine serviced on an annual rotation is so key of keeping this high-performance sewing machine in top running conditions. Now remember, don't forget to click like on the video after you watch them, and if you haven't already, subscribe to the YouTube channel. That helps us out a lot, and we can't wait to see all the wonderful things that you'll create on your new BERNINA 790 Pro, your new best friend.